Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're watching the session from. My name is Nitika Gupta. I'm a program manager lead at the identity division at Microsoft. My team is responsible for identity security capabilities like Azure AD Conditional Access and Azure MFA.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rahul Prakash. I'm also a program manager lead in the identity division at Microsoft, where I focus on identity governance and access management.
Today, we're going to talk about a set of winning strategies that the identity team has developed while working closely with customers based on how they use our technology and manage the environment. These winning strategies have been published in a white paper that we call 5 Steps to Secure Your Identity Infrastructure. These winning strategies span from strengthening your credentials, reducing your attack surface, automating threat response, utilizing cloud intelligence, and empowering your users with self-service. Throughout this presentation, Rahul and I are going to demonstrate examples of how you can use Azure AD identity security and governance capabilities to achieve these winning strategies. But before we dive in, we want to make sure you have a strong foundation that is ready for identity security and governance capabilities. For that, I'll hand off to Rahul.
Thanks, Nitika. Before we get into the 5 winning strategies for identity security and governance, it is really important to start with a strong identity foundation in the cloud. Azure AD is the largest cloud identity provider in the world, with over 200,000 organizations, 345 million monthly active users, and 30 billion daily authentication requests. We have some great technology that proactively helps you detect and remediate threats. But for all this technology to work, we need to first do a few things. We need to first get your users into Azure AD. We've been investing heavily to make this easier for you. You can bring your users from on-premises environments via cloud provisioning, which we announced last year, or also directly from cloud HR apps such as Workday and SuccessFactors. Along with bringing your users, you should also connect your applications to Azure AD to take advantage of all the richness that we provide. These could be applications in the cloud, or even other apps that support the SCIM standard for provisioning, or legacy on-premises apps that can be connected via Azure AD App Proxy. So now that you've brought your users into Azure AD and you've connected your applications to Azure AD, I'm going to hand it back to Nitika to talk about how you can strengthen your credentials to keep your users safe.
Thank you so much, Rahul. We live in a world where passwords are no longer good enough. Attacks are on the rise, and majority of these attacks are related to passwords. This year alone, our team has seen an increase in password spray attack by 230%. In August 2020, we detected 9 million high-risk sign-ins and 2 million compromised accounts. Passwords are no longer good enough. This is why it's important to verify your identity with stronger authentication. Strong authentication can prevent identity attacks by 99.9%. As you develop your strategy for strengthening your credentials, you should deploy the most secure, usable, and cost-effective method for your organization and your users. Passwords, especially the commonly used passwords like 123456, password 1, are bad. Telecom-based methods like SMS and voice can add an additional layer of verification. However, they have a dependency on telecom providers. End users need connectivity, and it may even cost your end users. Microsoft Authenticator app provides a better experience where users can simply approve a notification and sign in to the application. Alternatively, end users can also use the one-time passcode that is displayed in the app when they are in disconnected environments. While augmenting the passwords with another layer of authentication works, the best way to go is to eliminate passwords completely in your environment. Now let's show you how it all works in a real world. Let's take the example of Woodgrove Bank. Nitika, who's an IT admin at Woodgrove Bank, is leading Woodgrove's journey to eliminate passwords. Woodgrove wants to start deploying passwordless phone sign-in using Microsoft Authenticator. Woodgrove wants to do a phased rollout and plans to start the rollout with the more tech-savvy people in the organization, that is the tenant admins, the Azure admin, and the app admin. Next, Woodgrove wants to make sure there are no backdoors that can avoid strong authentication. So they want to block legacy authentication in their environment. Let's show you how Nithika, the IT admin at Woodgrove, goes about configuring these policies. I'm the IT admin at Woodgrove. I'm in the security admin experience in Azure AD, which is the one-stop shop for all identity security capabilities. To roll out passwordless phone sign-in, I'll go to authentication method policy experience. I want to enable Microsoft Authenticator passwordless sign-in for my pilot group. So I'll select the passwordless pilot group, which contains all the admins in my organization. Once I save this policy, now all users that are part of the pilot group can use the Microsoft Authenticator passwordless phone sign-in. Now that I've configured passwordless phone sign-in, the next thing I want to make sure is there is no backdoor that can get through without passwordless phone sign-in. For that, I will go to conditional access. Within conditional access, I want to create a new policy to block legacy authentication. I want to apply this policy to the users of the passwordless phone sign-in pilot group. It's the same group that I enabled passwordless phone sign-in for. This policy applies to all apps, so irrespective of the app the user is signing into, they will be using strong authentication using passwordless. Under conditions, I want to select a few client apps. Here, I selected the legacy client apps. Next, I want to block access from any of these client apps. Once I enable this policy, any user who's coming from legacy authentication will be blocked. Now let's see what happens when Sarah tries to sign in to an application. Sarah is an employee at Woodgrove and also a member of the ServiceNow admin group and is in scope for the passwordless phone sign-in and block legacy authentication policy. It's Monday morning. Sarah is trying to get to her applications to get work done. As usual, she's prompted to enter her username and password. Next, she gets a prompt to provide additional information to secure her account. She's prompted to download the Authenticator app. She scans the QR code to set up the account in the Authenticator app. Next, she simply verifies the account is able to get notification. And that's it. She's set up with Microsoft Authenticator, passwordless phone sign-in, and is ready to access her applications. So here are the winning strategies for strengthening your credentials. Enable multi-factor authentication for all your admins if you still haven't. Start deploying strong authentication and passwordless for all your users. And lastly, block legacy authentication to prevent any backdoors in your environment. With that, I'll hand off to Rahul, who's going to talk about reducing your attack surface.
Great, thank you, Nithika. So Nithika just showed you how you can strengthen your credentials using capabilities such as phone sign-in and blocking legacy authentication via conditional access. In Azure AD, we help you reduce your attack surface through multiple technologies. And like you just saw, conditional access is one of the first ones, which helps you put some really good checks in place, such as device and location requirements for when your users are accessing applications in your organization. But there's also another risk vector, and these are your privileged administrators. These are the folks who have lots of permissions, and if they get compromised, can cause extensive damage to your environment. Over time, you might have users assigned to admin roles who amass more and more access over time, and this just adds to your overall risk posture in your organization. What you really want is to not have any standing admin access. Instead, your admins should have just enough access, just in time for when it is needed. This helps reduce your overall risk profile, so in case your privileged users even get phished or attacked, your overall risk is vastly reduced. Furthermore, to really reduce your attack surface, you want to use our advanced governance solutions such as entitlement management. Entitlement management provides lifecycle management for your employees as well as your non-employees like guests, business partners, and vendors. You can create predefined access packages of resources that contain groups, applications, SharePoint sites, and you can then define policies on who can request access, for how long, and include the appropriate workflows. Finally, users' access is always time-bound and can be reviewed periodically via Azure AD Access Reviews. So let's dive into a demo now. With several employees working from home these days, Woodgrove Bank is really worried about increase in attacks, which is why they want to harden their security and governance controls to reduce their overall attack surface. In the next few minutes, we're going to show you how Woodgrove Bank is going to do three things. First, Woodgrove's IT admin, Nithika Gupta, is going to enable a conditional access policy to protect Woodgrove's sensitive applications. She's going to start with ServiceNow. And since more users are accessing these resources from home, she wants to ensure that users are using compliant managed devices when doing so. But Nithika also understands that not all users are able to use managed devices. And for them, she needs to be able to manage an exception policy and lifecycle. We're going to show you how she does exactly that with our service, Azure AD Entitlement Management. And finally, we'll show you how she applies privileged access groups, a new feature available in identity governance that allows her to replace standing access for ServiceNow administrators and instead gives those admins the capability to elevate their admin privileges for limited durations only when they need to perform admin type activities inside ServiceNow. So first, Nithika navigates to the conditional access experience in the Azure portal, where she starts creating a conditional access policy. Just as she earlier rolled out phone sign-in to a small group of users, she similarly scopes the policy to just the ServiceNow administrators. And then she creates an exception group and adds an exception group for users to be excluded from the policy. She then selects the ServiceNow application and finally requires devices to be compliant when granting users access. Now, Nithika is worried about the exception group that she just created for her conditional access policy. She's worried that it may balloon over time as more users request to join this group. So she wants to have some sort of lifecycle management on that exception group. For this, she wants a systematic way to manage the lifecycle, so she uses entitlement management. She navigates to the identity governance experience in the Azure portal, where she selects Create a New Access Package. She gives the package a name, a description, and adds it to a catalog of policies that she's using to manage other conditional access policy exceptions. Next, she wants to add the exception group, so she searches for it and adds the exception group. She then specifies the users who can request access to this package and enables an approval workflow. She configures the approval workflow and selects an approver. She also sets the membership to expire in 90 days. And what this really means is that from the time someone gets access to this access package, they're going to lose it after 90 days. She also turns on periodic access reviews and turns on monthly reviews in this case, so that even if a user is a member of this access package, their access is periodically being reviewed. She reviews the details and creates the access package. So there you have it. After the access package is created, she has a link to the My Access portal available here. Now, there are multiple ways for end users to get to this access package and request access. This is just one of them. She sends this link to folks in the organization who need to request access to the exception policy. So now let's take a look at Sarah's experience. As a recap, Sarah is a ServiceNow administrator who does not have a managed device and therefore needs an exception to the conditional access policy that Nithika enabled earlier. So she signs in and uses the link that was provided by Nithika. Over here, she sees the exact access package and she reads the description and confirms that this is the one that she wants access to. She then provides a business justification and can also choose to request this package for a certain duration. Nithika, on the other hand, now gets a notification. This notification is to approve or deny Sarah's request. She's also directed to My Access to view her pending approvals. In this case, she doesn't know who Sarah is, so she clicks into the details to view more details about Sarah before agreeing to approve her request. She can look at details about the request, details of what is inside the access package in case it's been a while since she put this together, and she can also look at the approval history, which is, has there been someone else who approved or denied Sarah's access to this access package in the past? Based on all this information, Nithika believes that Sarah should have access to this access package and therefore be excluded from the conditional access policy, so she goes ahead and approves Sarah's access. So now that Nithika has enabled a conditional access policy and has created an access package to manage exceptions, she wants to further reduce her attack surface by requiring all ServiceNow administrators to only have admin access to the application when needed, and only for a short duration of time. She navigates to the Privileged Access Groups experience in the Azure portal and searches for a group to enable for this experience. She searches for and selects the ServiceNow admin group and makes it a managed group. She then clicks on Add Assignment, selects the role. In this case, the role is a member. She searches for Sarah and adds her to the group as an eligible member. So now it's back to Monday morning and Sarah needs her admin privileges for ServiceNow. So she navigates to the Privileged Access Group experience in the Azure portal and chooses to activate her role as a member of this group. She chooses a duration, enters a reason, and waits for the on-screen confirmation. So there you have it. Woodgrove was able to reduce its attack surface by following some of our winning strategies. Reduce standing admin access for your sensitive applications, deploy conditional access, perform lifecycle management, and recertify users' access periodically. Back to you, Nithika.
Thank you, Rahul. Next, we're going to talk about winning strategy 3, automating threat response with Azure Active Directory. Azure AD Identity Protection uses machine learning to detect any threats in real time. As attacks evolve and attackers get more sophisticated, identity protection is continuously evolving to keep your users secure. With risk-based conditional access policies, you can automate the response to these threats in real time. Woodgrove Bank IT is unable to keep up with the huge demand as the entire company is working from home. To efficiently manage the environment and reduce the time to respond to these threats, Woodgrove Bank IT wants to automate threat response. Nithika, the IT admin at Woodgrove, discovers the alerts that are produced by Azure AD Identity Protection. Then she automates the threat response by enabling a risk policy to require secure password change. Now let's imagine I am the IT admin at Woodgrove. I just received this email from Identity Protection saying that Woodgrove users are at risk. I immediately click on this email, which takes me to Identity Protection dashboard. Here I can see the trend of users at risk over time. Further, I can click on this to see the list of users that are at risk. This list is really long. For prioritization, I'm going to focus on the high-risk users in my environment. And again, the list is still long, and it will take me hours to go through each of these users and reset their password. To automate the threat response, I'm going to create a conditional access policy to require password change for all these high-risk users. I'm in conditional access. I quickly want to create a conditional access policy to require password change for high-risk users. I want to apply this policy to all my users. This policy will apply to all cloud applications that the user is signing into. Under conditions, I want to select user risk and require only high-risk users to be in scope for the policy. Next, I want to require secure password change for all the high-risk users. And that's it. I can go ahead and save this policy. After this policy is saved, all the high-risk users in Woodgrove environment will be prompted to change password right away. Here you go. These are the winning strategies for automating threat response. You can require multi-factor authentication or block risky sign-ins in your environment. Next, you can enforce secure password change automatically or block any risky users in your environment. With that, I will hand off to Rahul to talk about utilizing cloud intelligence with Azure Active Directory.
Thanks, Nithika. So Nithika just showed you how you can automate your threat response using many of the capabilities that we provide. In this next section, utilizing cloud intelligence, we're going to show you how you can and should use all the rich analytics that are provided out of the box in Azure AD. We've already talked about some of them, like identity protection, that provides alerts such as risky sign-ins, risky users, impossible travel detection, and also integrates really well with other Microsoft products, such as Microsoft Cloud App Security. And then there's privileged identity management. This is where we provide alerts about how many administrators you have in your directory. Are they using multi-factor authentication when they activate their privileged roles? And are they using any of their privileged roles to begin with? And lastly, we also have a bunch of customizable workbook analytics. These are some really cool analytics capabilities that lets you understand in depth how your conditional access policies are performing. You can look at sign-in history and provide really rich visualizations by yourself. There's tons that are out of the box, but it's super easy to customize for your own needs as well. Over the next few minutes, we're going to show you how Nithika, Woodgrove's favorite IT administrator, takes advantage of the analytics that is available natively in Azure AD. So first, Nithika notices an email telling her that someone activated a global admin role outside PIM, which is odd since all privileged users inside Woodgrove are expected to use PIM. She clicks on the alert and also views other alerts inside the privileged identity management experience in the Azure portal. She sees that there's 20 roles that have been assigned outside of PIM. There's 23 roles that don't require multi-factor authentication. And there's 82 administrators who haven't used their privileged roles in a long time. All of this looks suspicious. She also sees that there's 139 global administrators in her tenant. That is very high. She then clicks on Discovery and Insights. And in Discovery and Insights, she notices that there are 7 service principals assigned to privileged roles. Now, Nithika realizes that service principals is an emerging threat vector because they often go unchecked, and a malicious actor may have access to a service principal for a long time before he or she is caught. So she clicks on Review Service Principal, and she can see all the service principals by roles that they're assigned to. She notices that there's 5 service principals assigned to the application admin role, but she doesn't recognize 2 of them. So she's just going to click those 2 and remove those assignments. Next, as we saw earlier, Nithika turned on all these conditional access policies. She turned on a policy to block legacy authentication, and later she turned on a policy to require a compliant device when you're logging into ServiceNow. She's curious to see how these policies are performing. So she navigates to the Insights and Reporting experience inside Conditional Access. Here, she can filter her view in many different ways. She can select a single policy or choose to see all of her policies at the same time. She can select a time range. The users, in case she's interested in a specific user, she can go and drill down on that one specific user. She can even filter by application in case she's really interested in looking at ServiceNow, for instance, over here. She wants to know, of all the sign-ins that have happened in the last 7 days, how many sign-ins were not protected by any conditional access policy. She sees that there were 5.6 thousand sign-ins where a conditional access policy did not apply. She further drills into the data to see that almost all of these sign-ins were coming from unmanaged devices. Since she's already rolling out an unmanaged device policy, that might take care of the situation for her. She also notices that there are 336 sign-ins that had a medium risk associated with them, which is kind of concerning, and that these sign-ins were coming from many different locations in the world, many where their organization doesn't do any business. So she may really consider turning on a conditional access policy to block sign-ins from those different countries. She can also see which applications those users are trying to sign into, and who these users are and when they last signed in. So here we showed you a workbook that is pre-built for you in conditional access, but there are several other such workbooks available to you if you navigate to the workbook section under Azure AD. These range from analytics on her sign-in activity to access package activity, and like we just saw, conditional access activity as well. So everything we just showed you today is available for you to explore in Azure AD. At the very minimum, we recommend that you pay attention to the emails that you get from Azure AD Privileged Identity Management and Identity Protection, and also navigate to the Alerts and Insights sections in PIM, Identity Protection, Conditional Access. And lastly, you can use many of our APIs to connect to your own SIEM tools to build your own custom visualizations outside of Azure AD. With that, I'll turn it back to Nithika to talk about how you can empower your end users with self-service.
Thank you, Rahul. That was a really cool demo. The last winning strategy is to empower your end users. In this section, we will highlight a couple of self-service capabilities in identity security and governance. With My Sign-ins, end users can review their own sign-in activity. Within each sign-in activity, end users can report any suspicious sign-ins by simply saying, "This looks unfamiliar" or "This wasn't me." Users can further self-remediate their accounts if they report a suspicious sign-in. With access reviews, IT can simply delegate reviewing access to resources like your groups, your apps, your roles to either the user themselves or a set of reviewers. IT can schedule these reviews to run periodically and automate the response at the end of this review. With remote work, it's been challenging for Woodgrove IT and help desk teams to keep up with the demand of their users. Woodgrove IT is looking to empower their users and business teams to allow IT to scale and end users to be productive. First off, Nitika, who's the IT admin at Woodgrove, runs a campaign to drive awareness for the My Sign-ins page and the ability for users to be able to self-report their sign-ins. Next, Nitika sets up an access review for users to verify their access to ServiceNow. Without further ado, let's show you how Nitika at Woodgrove is leveraging these self-service capabilities. Now let's imagine Sarah is an end user at Woodgrove, and she's also the ServiceNow admin that we showed earlier. She has received an email from IT about the My Sign-in page. She is really excited, and she goes to the page immediately. Within the My Sign-in page, Sarah can review the sign-in activity for her account, which is mostly her signing in from home, from Seattle area, while she's working from her Windows machine. As she scrolls down, she comes across the sign-in from France. She hasn't traveled in months. She clicks on the sign-in and reports that it's unfamiliar. She's then prompted to review her sign-in info, and then the status for the sign-in is updated to be unsafe. Now back to Nitika from IT. I'm really happy to see the positive response from end users like Sarah to the My Sign-in page campaign. Next, I want to set up access review so Woodgrove users can self-review their ServiceNow access. I'll go ahead and create a new access review. Woodgrove security policies require that sensitive application be reviewed every quarter. And that's what I'll do. I'll require a quarterly ServiceNow review. I will provide a friendly description for other IT admins to refer to it in the future. Next, I'll start the access review at the end of this month, which is 30th of September, 2020. This will give me plenty of time to send out all the communications to the end users. Next, I can define who the access review is for. Next, I want to require this review for ServiceNow application, so I'll select Assign to an application. I want to apply this review to all the users for ServiceNow, so I'll select everyone instead of guest users only. This review applies to my sensitive application, which is ServiceNow in this case. I want users to self-review their access. Here I can set up what happens if the reviewers don't respond, which in this case will lead to users losing access to ServiceNow. Lastly, I can add additional content to personalize the email that is going to the reviewers to provide some Woodgrove specific content. That's it. I can start this access review, and on the 30th of September, ServiceNow users will get an email asking to review access to ServiceNow. Here you go. These are the winning strategies, not just for you, but also for your end users. In addition to My Sign-ins and access reviews, you can empower your end users by requiring self-service password reset, group access, and application access. And you can also create access packages using entitlement management. To wrap up this session, here are the winning strategies for identity security and governance. Rahul and I walked you through some examples for how you can achieve these winning strategies using Azure AD, identity security, and governance capabilities. We highly recommend that you read the document at aka.ms/security steps to get an exhaustive list of all the ways to achieve these 5 winning strategies. With that, we are at the end of our presentation.
Thank you for watching.